Welcome to Blind Spots, a podcast where we're helping you fill the gap between what you want to do with your money and what you actually do. We are professional investors, writers, and financial planners helping you navigate the complexities of finance to optimize what you can control and cut out the rest. Join your host, Nick Shermans and Aaron Varghese, as we discuss the questions and nuances surrounding everyday money management. Okay, welcome back to another episode of Blind Spots. In today's episode, we are doing a follow-up to our last episode, The Dark Side of Retirement, and we are going to be talking about the post-career mindset. So our last episode was, as the title says, The Dark Side of Retirement, what is often overlooked when planning for retirement. That was this story of someone whose identity was grossly tied to their career. And when they retired, they lost themselves and it had a really sad ending. So we think there's a lot that you can learn from that episode. But in today's Blind Spots episode, we're talking about the career mindset, questions to ask yourself, and areas to think about whether you are gearing up for retirement or you are in retirement.
So a lot of this information is coming from a survey called the Retirement Time Analysis, where this company asked a basket of retirees, and that's probably the incorrect way to say it, but a survey of retirees about how they were feeling about the transition from working to their retirement years. And from this, it said 40 to 60% of U.S. workers feel their job is a significant part of their identity. Okay, so this, again, piggybacks on our last post, and we're going to pivot into the positive side, things that you can start to think about now that'll help you sort through the softer side of retirement, stuff that you probably haven't thought about, but can have a major influence on your own personal happiness and how successful you are embarking on the retirement journey.
So let's start with the mindset shift that we have mentioned many times in this podcast, but it comes up all the time in client meetings with people who are ready to retire or have already retired.
Yeah, and this is probably the biggest gap that nobody talks about, right? And part of the reason why I like the softer side of retirement, because nobody talks about it. Everyone talks about the hard numbers, which I think are really important. We've wrote blogs, we've done podcasts on figuring out if your money's going to last and all those popular questions. What no one talks about is the softer side. And I think it's at the top of that list is shifting your mindset from the relentless pursuit of more, right? So when you're working, you're saving, you're investing, you're taking risk, you're potentially taking on debt. You're focused on building your balance sheet. You're focused on building wealth, which is great. But the skill set for building wealth and keeping wealth are completely different. Most retirees miss the downshift. Keeping wealth, patience, being content, finding you're enough, understanding you're never going to be the richest person in the world, putting your flag in the ground and saying, I've built, I've saved, I've invested, I'm comfortable with what I have. Now I'm going to focus on being measured, preserving what I have, not taking risks, really downshifting. And at some point in everyone's life, money becomes less important. Relationships, health, activities, passions, your family, your friends, those all become more important. And the example that I use is if you ask the average person on the street if they would inherit Warren Buffett's wealth, billions of dollars, but the caveat was they had to also take on Warren Buffett's age, right? So you're going to be a billionaire, but now you're 85 or 90 years old. Most people would say no, which tells me at some point in your life arc, money becomes less important and those other things that I mentioned become more important.
That's really fascinating. I mean, anyone would take millions of dollars, but to have your life, for me to jump to 85 years old, I would be missing out on a whole lot of life in between. It really puts things into perspective.
So the great mystery is, what age does the baton get passed between money and time? So, but it all goes back to finding you're enough. At some point, money's not going to be the thing. It's going to be time. It's going to be health. It's going to be all these other intangibles that make life meaningful. Money's just a tool for time and freedom when you think about it.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So let's talk about daily habits and activities. That was a big part of our last episode. But you're passionate about the social connection in retirees and humans just in general.
Yeah, and I think back in the 80s or 70s, this probably wasn't a huge deal. But think about the digital age where we can hop on a laptop, we can hop on our cell phone, we can connect with people without really connecting with them, if that makes sense. Like you can scratch your social itch without leaving your house. So I think it's really important, and it takes effort, it takes intention to stay socially connected with friends, families, neighbors. It's been shown in this study that retirees and just people in general live longer and are generally happier than those who are not socially engaged. So I think living a well-rounded, healthy lifestyle, there is very much a social component with that. I mean, we just saw with the pandemic how that took a mental wellness or mental health toll on this country and really on the world. That social connection was missing. So it's really important for people as part of a balanced, healthy lifestyle to have that social connection.
In addition to that, when we were talking about preparing for this episode, you mentioned that it's healthy to always have something to look forward to. Expand on that, please.
And I'm trying to figure out who told me that, but it's one of those moments that was seared in my head. Someone said, "Hey, Nick, the key to happiness in life is always to have something to look forward to." And then I looked at my own calendar, and every 4 or 5 months, my wife and I try to get away, and we put something on the calendar, and we both look forward to that. I'm not saying that's the source of our happiness. Our kids bring us joy. My career is fulfilling. I have great friends, but there is something to that, to always have something to look forward to. Aaron, I know you travel as well. But bringing it back to the topic, I think retirees, just by developing a list of things that they want to do before they pass on, can be a very powerful thing. People call it a bucket list. You can call it whatever you want. It could be short term. It could be long term. It could be travel related. It could be making amends with your brother. So I think this can have various meanings, but always having something to look forward to, creating a list on things that you want to accomplish, and even more simply than that, just writing down what makes you happy, what makes you tick, what makes you happy. It could be a good book, it could be trying a new skill, trying something new, it could be playing golf. I think people would do well just to identify what makes you happy and then align their life with that thing or things.
So, what are you looking forward to right now? What's on your personal calendar?
Well, the weather finally turned. As some people know, I'm a golfer. That's my competitive outlet. I like being outside. I like not looking at my cell phone. I like talking with my friends and getting bro time, if you will. So I've got a slew of golf tournaments coming up. My wife turns 39. I hope that's okay for me to say. She turns 39. We're going to Vegas for a few days. It's our anniversary at the end of June. So we have yet to put something on the calendar as far as going out of town, but we usually take a night or two. So those things I'm really looking forward to. And I'm just looking forward to summer. The kids are home, kind of slow down the pace a little bit. School can be a rat race. So just really the simple things is what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, I'm ready for some sunshine. I come from the Sunshine State, and this is my 7th year now in the Pacific Northwest, and it hasn't really gotten to me the way that it's gotten to me this year. So I don't know if this year was a little different. I think it was more of a wet and rainy spring that we've had, but I'm just ready for some sunshine. I need it desperately.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Like this year was terrible. I don't even know what you would call this, but it was dark and gray and wet.
Yeah. Anyways. Okay. While you were talking about bucket lists and kind of timing and things like that, this article that we'll have linked down below talked about the hard reality of timing after retirement. The traditional retirement age is around 65 right now, and there is, again, kind of this hard reality that a portion of that will be spent alone, and the intention that needs to go into planning for those bucket list type items. So I thought it was just an interesting point that they made about the intention of front loading important activities, those things that you want to make sure you accomplish before you pass or before your partner passes, and how that can help reduce the regret of not experiencing those shared interests.
Well, and I think it can be even more simple than that. I mean, you think about the vacuum that work leaves. Like once you hang up your shoes, to borrow an athlete term, to hang up your cleats and you move on to the next chapter, you suddenly have a major vacuum to fill. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of people would do well just to understand what they're going to be doing at Tuesday at 10 a.m. on a random day, right? Building out a schedule, building out a routine to replace that vacuum that work filled. Because most people worked 7, 8, 9 hours a day, especially folks that are older. They're used to commuting to the office and coming back. Once that gap is there, like, you have to be intentional about the way that you fill it. So a couple of the questions that this survey asked, which I think are really good, we could start looping these into our client meetings, is what would happen if you had the money to retire today and your job was taken away from you? Why is work so important to you? How does your spouse or partner feel about how long you should work until retirement? Have you explored options for other types of work that help provide meaning but still give personal flexibility? So that's another important point too, because a lot of folks like to work. They really enjoy working. It's part of their identity. I think you can still work in retirement, but just a different way, like unleashing a passion hobby. Like, I'm passionate about golf. I've always toyed with the idea of doing something completely different and documenting my journey on YouTube. Like what would happen if I suddenly became an artist and created art and tried to sell it? Like doing something I have no business in, I have no skill, I have no background, and just doing something completely different, or doing something that I'm passionate about. Like, what would that look like? These are some of the questions I think you can ask yourself to live a more fulfilling and meaningful retirement.
You kind of just answered it, but I'm interested in your personal thoughts. For you to answer that first question is, if you had the money to retire today, what would you do?
The first thing I would do. Okay, well, we'll flip this to you. I would do nothing for a year. Like, I've been working for 20 years. Like, I don't know what it's like to not work. So I would do nothing for a year. I wouldn't think about anything in 6 months. I would get in the best shape I possibly can. I would get as good at golf as I possibly could. I would coach all of my kids' sports teams, which I coach now, but I'd coach all of them. And after that year, like, I have a passion for teaching and educating. So I'd probably look at that avenue. Like, back in the day when I was in my late 20s, I taught a finance class at WSU in Vancouver. And that was really fulfilling, but it took a lot of time. And once I started to have kids, I couldn't do it anymore. But something along those lines, coaching. I would certainly read more. I would travel more. I would coach all my kids' teams, and I would look to educate.
Do you have anything on your bucket list that you absolutely for sure need to have or want to do?
You're putting me on the spot here. I mean, aside from golf courses that I'd like to play, I really just want to go to every continent and immerse myself in the culture, right? Maybe get an Airbnb for a month and have no travel plans, have no agenda, and just figure it out for myself and my wife, obviously.
I love that. That sounds exciting.
How about you?
On my bucket list? So when I think about a bucket list, there's one that I have thought about for years, and I don't really know where it came from, but it's to ice skate on Lake Louise in Canada, in the Banff area. I was a figure skater growing up, and I've never, being from the Sunshine State, never skated on an outdoor or like pond or natural rink or anything like that. So that's on my bucket list. And Lake Louise is beautiful. And from what I've seen, it freezes clear. So you can see the bottom of the lake.
That is oddly specific, but I like it.
It's on the bucket list.
What about if you had the money to retire today? What would you be focused on?
100% it would be traveling. And speaking of things to look forward to, this is the first time in a long time that I haven't had travel plans or plane tickets or a trip booked. And I'm getting the itch already. So it would definitely be to travel anywhere and everywhere.
Gotcha.
That's what I would do. So yeah, filling your time is very important. That was one thing a big part of what we touched on in the last episode, and kind of keeping yourself out of the dark side of retirement.
Well, and it's important to anticipate a lot of this stuff. So, again, a lot of people ask the financial questions when they're about to retire. They don't ask the softer questions. What am I going to be doing on a random Tuesday or Thursday? Because again, that vacuum is very wide. And if you can get ahead of a lot of this stuff, it's probably going to save you pain in the future, and loop your spouse into a lot of these conversations, because if you're like me or like Aaron, you're probably going to be doing a lot of these things with your spouse. So you want to get their version of what a successful retirement looks like as well.
Yeah, aligning expectations is probably a whole podcast episode in itself, but aligning retirement expectations with your spouse is a big one. But having, we always say that money is emotional, but a lot of these questions around retirement are emotional, and it's hard to have hard conversations, but it's definitely worthwhile. Okay. So thanks for listening to this episode of Blind Spots. I hope there was some good takeaways for you as you are thinking about retiring, or if you have already retired. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to us at insight@pureportfolios.com, and we will see you in the next one.